So the first thing we're going to look at, and I'm going to use the folders that come included, is how we use an ink pad to ink inside of our embossing folder. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can either ink onto the emboss or the deboss. And I'm going to start with this one here and show you how we would ink onto the emboss. Now remember, all of the embossing folders that we do in our range are screen printed. So it's really easy to remember that if you want to emboss, we're going to work with the side where we have the printing. So we open this up, and I'm going to use one of the Tim Holtz Distress inks. Now you could, if you wanted, just take the ink and ink straight onto the folder like that, but you will end up with a lot of ink on there and an inconsistency in the way it's applied. So instead, I'm going to apply the ink onto a brayer. So I'm just picking up plenty of ink onto the brayer here. And what this will do is it will just give me even application of ink across the whole surface of the folder. Okay? So once we've got the ink on the brayer, and I'm just going to make sure we've got plenty on there so that you get a nice deep vibrant ink on here so that the camera can pick this up. I'm just applying the ink over the surface of the folder now, and you can see that ink transferring onto the raised parts of the embossing folder. Okay, just make sure we get plenty on, and you want even coverage. So where I've got a little bit too much ink in some areas, I'm just going to keep going over it with the brayer so that we only get the coverage where we want it. So that is inked on the emboss of the folder, and I'm just going to pop that to one side, and I'm now going to ink on the deboss of the other folder so that you can see the two different ways. So this time I'm going to apply the ink in exactly the same way, but I'm going to put it onto the other side, so the side where we don't have the screen printing. So it's probably much easier for you to see there. It is now, instead of applying onto the background, it's just going over the hearts. So where we have the hearts deboss into the cardstock, that is going to add ink onto those sections there. So I'm just taking some plain white stamping card here and just popping that inside the folder and closing that down. And then do exactly the same. Because we've got the large cutting platform, we can do two at once. Put the cutting plate on the top and then offer that into the machine. So what you'll see is, well, you can see straight through there. Obviously, there's no ink on here because that is done on the reverse. So this is what it looks like when we ink into the deboss. What you've got is you've got that inked pattern inside. So this is how we'd usually use the cardstock with the embossed raised pattern, but the ink is inside the deboss section. And then if you contrast that with this one, you can immediately see the difference here. This one, if I lift them both up to the camera, this is where we've got ink in the background. So it just shows you the two different types of technique. Either you have ink inside the sections that would usually be raised, or we've got the ink in the all over colour background.